Namaskar. Well, friends, I heartily welcome you all to Bhim Bhashya, my audio-visual podcast series. This audio-visual podcast series has 54 short speeches on Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, unraveling as many as 25 different dimensions of his multifaceted genius. Friends, this podcast series is focused on Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, his thoughts, his actions, his philosophy, and above all, the grand vision that he had seen for the nation as a whole. That is what this podcast series is all about. So let's proceed. In this 50th episode, I'm going to talk about Dr. Ambedkar as a visionary, part 3. More specifically, I'm going to talk about Dr. Ambedkar's role as a critic of the reorganization of states on linguistic basis. Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had appointed in December 1953 a States Reorganization Commission under the chairmanship of Fazl Ali, which submitted its report in the year 1955. Dr. Ambedkar felt that creation of linguistic states was a burning issue of the day. The question, he said, is too important for me to sleep over in silence. According to Dr. Ambedkar, and I quote him, the formation of linguistic states, although essential, cannot be decided by any sort of hooliganism, nor must it be solved in a manner that will serve any political party interest. It must be solved by cold-blooded reasoning, unquote. That is precisely what Dr. Ambedkar attempted to do in his book titled Thoughts on Linguistic States, a critique of the report of the States Reorganization Commission 1955. And his book was published in December 1955. That is barely 1 year before his Mahaparinirvan on 6th of December 1956. Article 3 of the Constitution gives power to Parliament to create new states. This was done because there was no time to reorganize the states on linguistic basis, for which there was a great demand. In pursuance of the incessant demand, Prime Minister appointed the States Reorganization Commission to examine the question. In its report, the States Reorganization Commission recommended creation of 16 states. The important thing is to compare the size of the states. This is what Dr. Ambedkar is saying. Taking population as the measuring rod, the result may be presented as follows. According to Dr. Ambedkar, out of 16, there were 8 states with a population between 1 and 2 crores each. There were 4 states with a population between 2 to 4 crore each, and there was 1 state above 4 crore. There is 1 state above 6 crore. The result, to say the least, is fantastic, says Dr. Ambedkar. The Commission evidently thinks that the size of the state is a matter of no consequences, and that the equality in the size of the states constituting a federation is a matter of no moment. This is the first and the most terrible error which the Commission has committed. According to Dr. Ambedkar, if not rectified in time, it will indeed be a great deal. Dr. Ambedkar goes on to say in his book, one result of the recommendations of the States Reorganization Commission is the disparity in the size of the different states the Commission has suggested for creation. But there is another fault in the recommendation of the Commission, which perhaps is hidden, but which is nonetheless real. It lies in not considering the North in relation to the South. This will be clear from the following table. And in the table, he shows that the states have been divided into three groups: northern states, central states, and southern states. In the North India, the northern states, the total population is 14.5 crores. The central states have only 4 with a population of 5.34 crores. And for southern states, there are 5 states but with a population of 8.5 crore. This scheme, according to Dr. Ambedkar, this scheme of dividing India in the name of linguistic states cannot be overlooked. It is not so innocuous as the Commission thinks. It is full of poison, and the poison must be emptied right now. India is not even mentally and morally fit to call itself the United States of India. We have to go a long way to become the United States of India. The Union of India is far, far away from the United States of India. But this consolidation of the North and the balkanization of the South is not the way to achieve it. Dr. Ambedkar then goes on to talk about the pros and cons of a linguistic state. And then he adds the reasons why a unilingual state is stable and a multilingual state is unstable are quite obvious. A state is built on fellow feeling. To state briefly, it is a feeling of a corporate sentiment of oneness, which makes those who are charged with it feel that they are kith and kin. This feeling is a double-edged feeling. It is at once a feeling of fellowship for one's own kith and kin, and anti-fellowship for those who are no one's own kith and kin. It is a feeling of consciousness of kind, which on one hand binds together those who have it so strongly that it overrides all differences arising out of economic conflicts or social gradation, and on the other hand severs them from those who are not of their kind. It is a longing not to belong to any other group. The existence of this fellow feeling is the foundation of a stable and democratic state. This is one reason why a linguistic state is so essential. But there are other reasons why a state should be unilingual. There are 2 other reasons why the rule one state, one language is necessary. One reason is that democracy cannot work without friction unless there is a fellow feeling among those who constitute the state. factions fight for leadership, and discrimination in administration are factors ever present in a mixed state and are incompatible with democracy. Another reason, according to Dr. Ambedkar, another reason why it is necessary to adopt the rule of one state, one language is that it is the only solvent to racial and cultural conflicts. We therefore, says Dr. Ambedkar, want linguistic states for two reasons: to make it easy the way to democracy and to remove racial and cultural tensions. Must there be one state for one language? What does a linguistic state mean? Asks us Dr. Ambedkar. It can mean one of the two things. It can mean that all people speaking one language must be brought under the jurisdiction of one state. It can also mean that the people speaking one language may be grouped under many states, provided each state has under its jurisdiction people who are speaking one language. Which is the correct interpretation? The Commission took the view that the creation of one single state for all the people speaking one and the same language was the only rule to be observed. Let the reader have a look at the map number 1. He shows a map. He will at once note the disparity between the northern and the southern states. The disparity is tremendous. It will be impossible for the small states to bear the weight of the big states. How dangerous is this disparity? The Commission has not realized. Such disparity no doubt exists in the United States, but the mischief it might cause has been prevented by the provision in the Constitution of United States. The North versus the South. What the Commission has created is not a mere disparity between the states by leaving UP and Bihar as they are and by adding to them a new and bigger Madhya Pradesh with Rajasthan. It creates a new problem of North versus South. The North is Hindi speaking. The South is non-Hindi speaking. Most people do not know what is the size of Hindi speaking population. It is as much as 48% of the total population of India. Fixing one's eyes on this fact, one cannot fail to say that the Commission's effort will result in the consolidation of the North and the balkanization of the South. Can the South tolerate the dominance of the North? According to Dr. Ambedkar, there is a vast difference between the North and the South. The North is conservative, the South is progressive. The North is superstitious, the South is rational. South is educationally forward, the North is educationally backward. The culture of South is modern, the culture of the North is ancient. How can the rule of the North be tolerated by the South? Already there are signs of the South wanting to break away from the North. Then he adds an anecdote. Mr. Rajagopalachari, Dr. Ambedkar says, Mr. Rajagopalachari, when he was the head of the state and I was the law minister in charge of drafting the constitution, I went to Mr. Rajagopalachari for my usual interview. At one such interviews, Mr. Rajagopalachari, referring to the sort of constitution which the Constituent Assembly was making, said to me, and he quotes Mr. Rajagopalachari, "You are committing a great mistake. one federation for the whole of India with equal representation for all states will not work. In such a federation, the Prime Minister and the President of India will always be from the Hindi speaking area. You should have two federations, one federation of the north and one federation of the south, and a confederation of the two federations. Unquote. Dr. Ambedkar's argument runs as follows. He says, considering the vast cultural differences between the two sectors and the apprehensions of dominance of the North articulated by a conflict between the two in course of time. He observes, and this is the main point that he is making, he observes that the commission should have followed the principle of one state, one language, and not one language, one state. This is the critical point, and I want to re-emphasize that. Dr. Ambedkar says that the commission should have followed the principle of one state, one language, and not one language and one state. This is not mere quibbling of words. See the potent argument that Dr. Ambedkar is making. Dr. Ambedkar favors the formation of unilingual states as against multilingual states for the reasons that the former fosters a fellow feeling, which is the foundation of stable and democratic state, while the latter, with its enforced juxtaposition of two different linguistic groups, leads to faction fights for leadership and discrimination in administration. What Dr. Ambedkar was arguing here is that because North is predominantly Hindi speaking, what would happen if the formula used is one state, one language, rather than one language, one state? What would happen by the formula prescribed by the Fazil Ali Commission? What would happen is that in the north, there would be fewer states which are very large in size, whereas in the south, there would be a large number of states but with smaller sizes. And that will obviously create a tension between the north and the south in years to come. To remove, according to Dr. Ambedkar, to remove the disparity between the large states of the north and the small states of the south, which has been accentuated by the absence of the provision for equal representation of states in the central legislature, irrespective of their areas and population, Dr. Ambedkar's remedy was to divide large states into units with a population not exceeding 2 crore. Dr. Ambedkar suggested a tentative division of Bihar and Madhya Pradesh into 2 states each. And that has happened in the year 2002 when Madhya Pradesh was divided into Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, whereas Bihar has been divided into Bihar and Jharkhand. Dr. Ambedkar also recommended that there should be a trifurcation of UP. While talking about it, he actually drew maps to show how the Uttar Pradesh, or United Provinces as the state was earlier called, how that state can be trifurcated. But that has not happened. There was a time when one of the lady chief ministers did make a beginning, but nothing happened, nothing came out of it. But Dr. Ambedkar's suggestion was to divide today's Uttar Pradesh into 3 states. The idea was to have smaller states in north as well as south so that there is no extra dominance of the north over the south. Such divided smaller states, in Dr. Ambedkar's opinion, will meet the requirements of efficient administration and the special needs of different areas. It will also satisfy their sentiments. In a smaller state, the proportion of majority to minority, which in India is not political but communal and unchangeable, decreases, and the danger of the majority practicing tyranny over the minority is also minimized. You will be surprised at the suggestion that Dr. Ambedkar made. Dr. Ambedkar also advocated creation of a second capital for India and locating it in the south, preferably in the city of Hyderabad, so as to ease the tension and political polarization between the north and the south. What Dr. Ambedkar has pointed out and cogently argued in this book, which is a critique of the linguistic reorganization of states as recommended in 1955 by the Fazil Ali Commission, is extremely important. And he is looking way ahead into the future. And he is demonstrating that unless you divide the big Hindi-speaking states into small ones, there would be a dominance of North over South. Why? Because if Fazl Ali's principle of one language, one state is adopted, then there would be few larger states in the north and there would be large number of small states in the south. And that balance, that imbalance between north and south would be a potential source of conflict in future. And that is why he recommended the principle that rather than one language, one state, it should be one state, one language. So one gets the benefit of unilingual states without creating the tension between the north and the south. It clearly shows how much Dr. Ambedkar was ahead of his times. Well, friends, we conclude our session here. So long until we meet again real soon. Thank you. Namaskar.